Allora, buon pomeriggio, con piacere che diamo inizio a questa seconda edizione di Spring Parasitology, che è un'occasione di incontro soprattutto per i dottorandi dei nostri dipartimenti. Penso che questa tradizione la manterremo anche post-Covid perché è un'opportunità eccezionale di incontro, anche se non mi dispiacerebbe magari che a Napoli si facesse una riunione di dottorandi in presenza. Non vi rubo altro tempo, vi auguro buon lavoro. Purtroppo potrò seguire limitatamente perché alle 3 ho un incontro con gli organizzatori della Giornata Mondiale dell'NTDs 2022 per valutare quali edifici illuminare in varie parti del mondo. Quindi vi auguro buon lavoro, sentirò un po' della dottoressa Vismarra e poi vi dovrò lasciare. Prego.
Grazie mille, Prof. I will switch to English now. So welcome to everybody, and thank you because you greatly accepted to participate in this webinar of Spring Parasitology under the supervision of SOIPA. And I hope that will everybody enjoy the presentations for today. And because we're a bit late, I will start by nominate Alice Vismarra, which is our invited speaker. So she will delight us with the presentation of risk of parasite transmission through consumption of raw meat diet in pets. And I would like to say a few words about her. She is a researcher type A since 1st September 2021 at the University of Parma. She has achieved the European PhD in Veterinary Sciences in 2016, carried out of the inspection of the units of food of animal origin and parasitology, with the thesis entitled Intermediate Host of Toxoplasma gondii and Food Safety, Epidemiology, Genetics, and Parasite Survival in Meat-Producing Animals in Italy. So she will present a part of this us today. So Alice, be my guest. It's yours.
Thank you very much. I'm trying to share the... Let's see if it works. It's a honor for me being here. And thank you very much, Lavinia, for your presentation. As told by Lavinia, I'm going to tell you something about something that I have to study more in depth. So the risk of parasite transmission through the consumption of raw meat diets in pets. When we speak about raw meat, and in particular raw meat diet, I think that we have to ask us why raw meat diet. In fact, this is something that is improving in this year. So the question if it is only a passing food. First of all, we have to say that BARF diet, or in general raw meat diets, were developed during the 1990s. And from that period, it was very, very published. It is based on the consumption of raw meat, principally, but also bones, internal organs, and in particular, one of these veterinarians that developed and think about this type of diet. One of these was very, very convinced that. Sorry. Was very, very convinced that this type of diet is perfect for dogs because dogs are real carnivores, because dogs are very similar to wolves. To be sincere, other veterinarians doesn't think the same for several reasons. First of all, dogs could not be considered wolves because they have adapted their enzyme activity to carbohydrates-rich diet during domestication. Another point is that the wolf diet is almost 100% made of animal prey. Moreover, adult wolves could survive days without eating, without feeding. Io, scusate, sento
Sorry, Maria Paola? Maria Paola, can you hear us? No.
Maria Paola, just 1 second because I will go in the room.
Don't worry. But I can go on, it's not a problem, don't worry.
Now we don't hear anymore.
E dice lei, cioè tu il tuo entri sempre. Mi sconnetto. Sì.
Ok.
Okay, sorry about that. Sorry, Alicia, you can continue. Sorry.
Okay. Don't worry, thank you very much.
Sorry, Lavinia.
Yes.
You can shut down the microphone of other people, okay? You can do that.
Okay.
Ilaria Bellini, you can shut down. And if other people switch on, you can switch off as an administrator, okay?
Okay, okay. Thank you, thank you.
Okay, thank you very much. And the third and last point is that a wolf in the wild does not have the same life expectancy of a dog that lives in a domestic setting. All this just to say that for some nutritionists and some veterinarians, this type of diets are not very appropriate for dogs. From the other side, we have to consider that this type of diets are very diffused, in particular in big towns. And the reasons for this type of choice by the pets owners reside, first of all, in a sort of mistrust about the industries that produced dry and commercially prepared food, because they don't believe they use very good quality ingredients. They have mistrust about the production process, so they prefer to give to animal other type of food, in particular raw food. Raw food, of course, is very, very appreciated by cats and dogs for a sort of instinctual need. And there is also what I call the internet and blogs influence. In fact, a lot of these pet owners said that after the beginning of this type of diet, they saw a sort of miraculous health improvement. But this is how can I say, it's very, very influenced by the outside, because researchers make a research with a control group and a treated group with a BARF diet, and in both cases the blinded pets owners said that they were very, very happy about the miracles health improvement. So this optimistic perception is something very, very influenced. Then we have to consider that this type of diet, of course, implies a health risk for our pets. First of all, most of these diets are not nutritionally balanced, and so we could have metabolic and gastrointestinal dysfunction, maybe, for example, taurine deficiency, vitamin A intoxication, pain, kidney problems. So something related to metabolic and gastrointestinal dysfunction. Moreover, not less important, the risk of transmission of bacteria, mainly Salmonella, Listeria, E. coli, and also the related antibiotic resistance that could be related to these bacteria. So a risk not only for our pets, but also for humans, and of course, parasite transmission. The third point that is very, very important at the same time is that the risk of parasite environmental load. So the risk that parasite that commonly we can find in rural environment in this case, so with this type of diet, could have the chance to complete their life cycles for the closeness between intermediate host and definitive host. But if we look at parasites, we have to consider meat-borne parasites. So we speak about protozoa, but also nematodes and tapeworms. Which clinical manifestation we could have in pets feeded with raw meat? Of course, we could have the transmission of protozoa, and in a majority of cases, the clinical manifestations, we could have this type of manifestation mainly in puppies, so in young animals with not completed immune system. In the majority of cases, we do not have clinical manifestation, also because, for example, if we look at Toxoplasma gondii, cats are the definitive host of this parasite, so it's very, very difficult that they will develop clinical manifestation. But for example, it would happen, for example, in young cats that could develop enteritis or pneumonia, for example. But on the other side, for example, dogs could develop fever, anorexia, lethargy, diarrhea, but also neurological complaints. So the major risk is related to puppies in general. Then we could have, of course, clinical manifestation also in pets due to the presence of nematodes in foods, in raw meats in particular. If we look at nematodes, we speak about mainly Toxocara. Toxocara canis and Toxocara cati are very diffused. Cats and dogs are the definitive hosts. So in general, we do not have clinical manifestations in this type of animal. But we could have, for example, gastrointestinal complaints in puppies, once again. The prevalence of pathogen infection, in any case, could vary with age. So with puppies that are more interested by the infestation. With ancestry, we have a high infestation in strays and shelters dogs, and also frequency of deworming. In Europe, the average prevalence of toxocariasis is very stable since 25 years, but also proved here, young dogs and stray dogs are the most infested with this kind of parasites. And the source of infection could also influence the production of eggs, and in case of meat with larvae, the production of eggs starts earlier, so a major risk for environmental contamination. About Trichinella spiralis, generally we have no clinical signs, even if we have to remember that in some cases this could be possible. In fact, there is a very recent case report published by a German group in which they recorded poliomyelitis with unilateral lameness in a dog infested with the Trichinella. So something to take in our mind, but because it could happen. About tapeworms, we speak mainly about Echinococcus granulosus and Echinococcus multilocularis through zoonotic agent with a public health interest very, very high. Dogs are the definitive host of Echinococcus granulosus, but as we are going to see in a few minutes, recent reports highlighted that the cats and dogs would be also definitive hosts of Echinococcus multilocularis, in particular in very endemic areas. So the risk also for humans of having cats and dogs feed with contaminated meat, or of course for small rodents that they can find around, but the risk for humans to have the home setting completely contaminated with eggs. And then we could have tinea. Also in this case, dogs and cats can be the final host of various tinea species. Also in this case, we do not have important clinical signs, but also here we could have a problem related to public health. When I have to prepare this presentation, I have to be sincere. There is not too much. There are not too much very published paper on this field, and in particular on the risk analysis of using this type of raw meats diet for dogs and cats. So this could be an idea for future researchers, because this is something that need to have more data. When we speak.
Sorry, Alice.
Yes.
Your presentation is stuck at the first slide, and there are some comments of participants that are seeing only the first slide. You are not going on.
So I'm going out. What can I do?
You can share with us.
Okay.
Yes.
Alice, you can share your slides in this presentation, not in presentation mode.
Like this is okay for you?
Yeah. Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
Perfect. I can use this one, no problem.
But probably you can easily show your previous slides because nobody has seen that.
I have to do it now, or I can go on. I don't know.
As you prefer, but nobody see what, only hear your voice.
Oh my God, I'm sorry. I don't know. Maybe it's better if I go on. My presentation, of course, is available, and I can leave it to the students and so on.
Yes, Alice, you can go on, and then we see the time.
Okay, thank you very much. Sorry. So now let's see some examples of the papers I found in literature. In this case, a group of researchers from Netherlands analyzed zoonotic bacteria and parasites found in raw meat-based diets for cats and dogs. They analyzed 35 frozen raw meat diets, both at different retailers. They made a qualitative and a quantitative microbiology, and they also extracted DNA for T. gondii and Sarcocystis. They found 8 products positive for Sarcocystis and 2 products positive for Toxoplasma gondii. In this case, I think that we cannot consider a real risk this type of food for the transmission of parasite because it is frozen raw meats. And we know that Sarcocystis and Toxoplasma gondii are very sensitive to temperature. So in this case, I think that this type of meat could be considered sure for parasites and not for bacteria, of course. But the problem would be if this type of meat have been sold fresh, because in this case, of course, the risk of Sarcocystis and Toxoplasma gondii could be something real and to consider. Okay, about protozoa, I have some other examples. In the first paper, researchers analyzed Toxoplasma gondii, the seroprevalence of Toxoplasma gondii infection in dogs. And they can see that dogs that were fed with raw meat were significantly more frequently seropositive for Toxoplasma gondii than dogs that were eaten with commercially dry feed. And also looking at the IFAT titers, the titers were very, very high in this type of dogs compared to the others. The second paper looked at the seroprevalence of Neospora caninum specific antibodies in German breeding bitches. Can you see there's some other problem? No, okay.
No, it's okay, Alice.
Okay, also in this case, they found 6 seropositive individuals that were fed with fresh meat. And the third paper evaluated the bacterial and protozoal contamination of raw meat diets for dogs. And also in this case, they found a positivity rate, a positivity DNA of Cryptosporidium in 3 samples, while Neospora and Toxoplasma were not detected. This just to say that in some cases, of course, this type of meat for dogs were found positive also for protozoa. If we look at nematodes, the first thing that we have to say is that the infection rate dropped significantly after the imposition of sanitary regulation and the inspection in the slaughterhouses. Anyway, I reported here in the second paper a case of a big outbreaks of trichinosis in humans in this case. But the origin of the outbreaks has to be found in sausages made with pork meat, but also with dog meat, because it's something typical of this region. Researchers made serology on the dogs that live in the same area, and they found a very high rate of positivity. And they also examined the dog's meat, and they found effectively positive larvae in this type of meat. The third paper look at the presence of parasite, looking at the dog feces and also human feces from a region of Egypt, with also particular attention to Toxocaracanis. What researchers recorded is that the parasitic infection were found to be more frequent in dogs fed with uncooked feeds, And more interesting that lots of the parasite they found in the dog's feces were the same they found in the human feces. So how this parasite could be transmitted, and so the risk not only for pets but also for humans and for pets owners. Looking at tapeworms, briefly just to say what we said before. So in very endemic areas is possible that cats and dogs became also definitive host of Echinococcus multilocularis. So once again, the risk of contamination with eggs, and in particular the house settings that could be contaminated with eggs, so a risk for humans. But I think that we have to speak not only about meat, but also about raw fish, because in some cases pet owners prefer also to give to their pet raw fish. Also in this case, we could have the transmission of flukes, of roundworms, of tapeworms, and also of Cryptosporidium. So as reported in the paper on the right side of the screen. So the possibility of transmitting parasites also with raw fish. About this, I found this interesting paper from northern of the Vietnam. In this case, we have dogs that usually to eat raw fish. And these dogs could be a definitive host of small trematodes that could be found in these fish ponds. And in fact, researchers found that 76% of dogs positive for small trematode eggs. These dogs have been treated with praziquantel, but they become reinfected very soon after the treatment. And the hypothesis for this fact received mainly in the fact that in this area, in this geographical area, there are a lot of fish ponds that dogs could have free access to these ponds, so they eat fish very often. And so there is also a tendency of pet owners to give to their dogs the raw fish left over when they prepare meat for household members. So a risk also related to raw fish. The last paper I want to present you is this one. It is an Italian paper made by our colleagues from Sardinia. I found it very, very interesting because it doesn't focus only on the risk of transmission of parasites, but mainly on the impact that this type of diet could have on the environmental load of parasites, because using this type of diet could give to parasites more chance that are typical of rural areas to complete their life cycles. So a risk for pets, of course, but also a huge risk also for humans and for pets owners. Durasium, these are the key points that I think that they are very important to remember. So feeding companion animals with raw meat is dangerous because there is the risk of transmission and contracting parasitic infection. Parasites may be present, of course, in raw meat, and with this idea, with this modes, they have more chance for parasites to complete their life cycles because they have more chance to keep in touch with intermediate and definitive host. Infection can induce disease, of course, in intermediate hosts, human included, and environmental contamination could be very, very, very high. So the prevention received in using commercial food or anyway cook raw meat before feeding, and anyway avoid this raw meat in puppies. And an advice could be to limit the use of these raw diets in case of food intolerance or inflammatory bowel. To conclude, very last slide, just a curiosity, these recent discoveries, in 2020, there was a case of feline tuberculosis in cats associated with feeding commercial raw diets, and the fact that this type of diet, BARF in particular, are able to completely change the fecal microbiome and metabolome in dogs. So I concluded. Sorry for all the problems we have during this presentation, and I hope that I've been clear, and if there are some questions, I'm here. Thank you very much. I'm sorry.
Thank you, Alice, for your nice presentation and very complex. So if you have questions to address to Alice, we have a couple of minutes.